I'm Hazel Stevens, 34, watching my sister Amber play with my children at our family barbecue. My beautiful babies laugh as she spins them around, oblivious to the ache in my chest. 3 years ago, I had everything: a loving husband, dream job, perfect home. Then, Amber systematically dismantled my life piece by piece. My phone buzzes a message from Uncle Richard's lawyer. The notification preview stops my heart. Will reading tomorrow. $80. 000 inheritance with specific instructions. My sister took everything from me. But what she didn't know was that Uncle Richard's will was about to change everything. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button if you've ever had a family member betray you, and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and revenge. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Growing up, Amber and I were inseparable despite our 3-year age gap. She was the golden child, naturally gifted, effortlessly charming, and our parents' obvious favorite. While I worked hard for every achievement, Amber seemed to attract success like a magnet. Still, I never resented her. I was her protector, her confidant, her biggest cheerleader. When Amber was 12, she struggled with severe anxiety after a bullying incident at school. I spent nights beside her bed holding her hand until she fell asleep. When boys broke her heart in high school, I was there with ice cream and reassurance. When she failed her driver's test twice, I practiced with her for hours until she passed. That's what sisters do, right? We support each other through everything. Our different approaches to life became more apparent in college. I attended State University on academic scholarship, working part-time to cover expenses. Amber went to a prestigious private college on our parents' dime, changing majors 3 times before settling on communications. Despite the distance, we called each other daily. During my junior year, I met Jason Stevens at a campus fundraiser. He was studying business management. Ambitious, kind, and incredibly handsome with his warm brown eyes and infectious laugh. Our connection was instant. After 6 months of dating, I brought him home to meet my family during Thanksgiving break. Everyone loved him, especially Amber. "He's perfect for you, Hazel," she gushed, hugging me tightly. "I'm so happy you found someone special." Looking back, I should have noticed how her gaze lingered on him across the dinner table, how she touched his arm when she laughed at his jokes. But I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? After graduation, I landed my dream job as a marketing executive at Reynolds & Associates, a prestigious firm in the city. The position was competitive, over 200 applicants for one spot, but my portfolio and interview skills secured the opportunity. Meanwhile, Amber struggled to find direction, bouncing between temporary positions. "I just can't seem to find my place," she lamented during our weekly sister lunch. "Everyone expects so much from me." My heart broke for her. When an entry-level position opened at Reynolds, I recommended her immediately. My boss, Richard Thompson, was initially hesitant. Nepotism wasn't his style, but I vouched for her skills. Amber was ecstatic when she got the offer. "You're the best sister ever, Hazel. I'll make you proud, I promise." 2 years after meeting Jason, we married in a beautiful garden ceremony. Amber, my maid of honor, delivered a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "My sister has always been my hero," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "She deserves all the happiness in the world. Jason, you better treasure her every day." Was there a hint of something else beneath those words? A subtle tension in her smile. I dismissed the thought as wedding day nerves. Life was perfect for the next few years. Jason and I bought our dream home in the suburbs. A charming colonial with a wraparound porch and spacious backyard. Emma arrived first with her father's eyes and my stubborn determination. Liam followed 2 years later, a gentle soul with endless curiosity. My career flourished with promotions and accolades coming regularly. Jason's accounting practice grew steadily. We were living the dream. Amber remained single, advancing slowly at Reynolds through what I believed was her own merit. She was a constant presence in our lives. Sunday dinners, children's birthdays, impromptu visits. The kids adored their fun aunt who always brought presents and never enforced bedtime. The first warning bell rang during our family Christmas gathering 4 years ago. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I overheard Amber and Jason whispering near the back door. Their conversation stopped abruptly when I approached. Jason claimed they were discussing my Christmas present, but something in Amber's eyes, a flash of guilt quickly masked by her usual smile, unsettled me. Everything okay? I asked, looking between them. Of course, Amber laughed, touching Jason's arm briefly. Just holiday secrets. That night as we drove home, I mentioned the strange interaction to Jason. You're overthinking, babe, he said, eyes fixed on the road. Amber was just asking my advice about a guy she's seeing. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, and she was my sister. The two people I trusted most in the world. I had no idea that moment was the first thread unraveling in the tapestry of my perfect life. 6 months after that Christmas, Reynolds and Associates pitched for our biggest potential client, yet Meridian Technologies, a Fortune 500 company looking to rebrand their entire product line. Landing this account would mean millions in revenue and solidify our firm's reputation as an industry leader. Richard assigned me to lead the presentation, a vote of confidence in my abilities that filled me with both pride and pressure. For weeks, I poured everything into developing the perfect pitch. Late nights, early mornings, weekends sacrificed to research and strategy development. The presentation needed to be flawless, innovative, and perfectly tailored to Meridian's specific needs. Jason took on extra parenting duties, without complaint, understanding what this opportunity meant for my career. 3 days before the presentation, I was drowning in final preparations when Amber appeared at my office door with coffee and sympathy. You look exhausted, she said, placing the cup on my desk. Let me help. I could review the slides, check for typos, anything to lighten your load. Relief washed over me. This was the sister I knew and loved. Supportive, thoughtful, eager to help. I granted her access to my files, grateful for the assistance. You're a lifesaver, Amber. I just need fresh eyes to make sure everything's perfect. That's what sisters are for, she replied with a smile. I've got your back. The morning of the presentation, I arrived at the office 2 hours early to review everything one final time. When I opened the presentation file, my stomach dropped. Key slides were corrupted charts, displayed incorrect data, and our proposed timeline was missing entirely. I frantically searched backup files, but they showed the same problems. The Meridian executives would arrive in 90 minutes. Panic clawed at my throat as I desperately tried to recreate critical sections from memory and notes. Amber rushed in, appearing concerned. Oh my God, what happened? She gasped, leaning over my shoulder. I don't know. Everything was fine yesterday, but now it's a disaster. I can't believe this is happening. Technology, right? She said, shaking her head. Want me to help rebuild the missing sections? Despite her assistance, the presentation was a shadow of my original work. The Meridian team listened politely, but unimpressed. Their pointed questions revealed gaps in what I presented, making me appear unprepared and unprofessional. When I tried explaining the technical difficulties, their expressions showed skepticism rather than sympathy. After they left, Richard called me into his office, his disappointment evident. This isn't like you, Hazel. What happened out there? The files corrupted somehow. I had everything ready, Richard, I swear. In our business, excuses don't land accounts, he said, sighing. Meridian was ready to sign with us. Now, they're reconsidering all their options. Give me another chance. I can fix this. I hope so. But I need to be honest, this puts us in a difficult position. Your performance has always been exceptional, but today, I left his office feeling hollowed out. How could technology fail so catastrophically at the worst possible moment? The question haunted me as I buried myself in damage control, working frantically to salvage the Meridian account. For the next 2 weeks, I barely saw my family, sending daily follow-ups and additional materials to Meridian. Eventually, they agreed to a smaller contract, a fraction of the original opportunity. It was better than nothing, but still a significant professional blow. During this crisis, Amber was surprisingly present, bringing me lunch, offering encouragement, even staying late to help. Her support seemed genuine, which made what happened next even more confusing. An important email from Meridian's CEO never reached my inbox, though it was definitely sent. When I investigated, I discovered it had been mysteriously redirected to Amber's email account. She claimed ignorance about how it happened, but had already responded to the CEO with information that should have come from me. I was just trying to be helpful, she explained when I confronted her. You've been so overwhelmed, I thought answering quickly would reflect well on the company. Something didn't add up, but I couldn't piece it together. More incidents followed. Meetings rescheduled without my knowledge. Client calls routed to Amber instead of me, reports arriving in her inbox rather than mine. When Richard announced Amber's promotion to associate account manager, a position she shouldn't have qualified for with her limited experience, I felt the first real stirrings of suspicion. The timing seemed too convenient, especially when she was assigned to assist with the remains of the Meridian account. I think something strange is happening, I confided to my colleague Diane over lunch. Important communications keep getting misdirected to Amber instead of me. Diane looked uncomfortable. I've noticed things too. Last week I saw Amber at your computer when you stepped out for that conference call. What? Why would she? She said you asked her to print something for you. But when I asked if she needed help, she closed whatever she was looking at really quickly. That evening, I confronted Amber directly in the parking garage. Are you sabotaging me at work? Her eyes widened with hurt. How could you ask me that after everything we've been through together? Tears welled up immediately. I've only been trying to help you. You've been so stressed lately making mistakes. What mistakes? I don't make careless errors, Amber. Everyone slips sometimes, Hazel. You work too hard, try to be too perfect. It's okay to be human. Her tears made me doubt myself. Was I being paranoid? Projecting my frustrations onto my sister. When I mentioned my concerns to our parents during Sunday dinner, they were dismissive. Amber has always looked up to you, Mom said. She'd never do anything to hurt you. You're probably just feeling threatened because she's finally coming into her own, Dad added. Don't be selfish, Hazel. Their quick defense of Amber stung, but wasn't surprising. It had always been this way. Amber, the golden child. Me, the one, expected to be mature and understanding. Only Diane seemed to believe me quietly, pointing out discrepancies and warning me to be careful. Something's not right, she whispered after a staff meeting. Watch your back, Hazel. And secure your computer when you're away from your desk. I should have listened more closely. I should have acted more decisively. Instead, I doubted myself, questioned my perceptions, and missed the signs of the much larger betrayal unfolding in my own home. Partnelia marriage under attack. The first signs of trouble in my marriage were subtle. So subtle I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Jason started working later than usual, his explanations vague when I asked about his day. Our conversations grew shorter, his attention more distant. When I reached for him in bed, he was often too tired or stressed about work. I tried to be understanding. His accounting practice was growing, demanding more of his time and energy. We both had careers, children, responsibilities. It was natural for our relationship to evolve. But something felt off, a persistent unease I couldn't shake. Then came the unexplained expenses, dinner charges at restaurants. We hadn't visited together, a hotel booking in the city, on a night he claimed to be at a client meeting in the suburbs, a jewelry purchase I never received. When I questioned these, his explanations came too quickly, too rehearsed. The dinner was with clients. I forgot to get a separate receipt. The hotel booking was a mistake by my assistant. The jewelry was supposed to be your anniversary present, but it wasn't right, so I returned it. I wanted to believe him. More than anything, I wanted these explanations to be true. Around this time, Amber started appearing at our house with increasing frequency, often when I wasn't home. She'd bring activities for the kids, or offer to help Jason with dinner before I returned from work. Her thoughtfulness should have been touching, but something about it made me uneasy. Amber stopped by again today, Jason would mention casually. She brought that pasta salad you like from Giordano's. That's the third time this week, I noted once. Doesn't she have her own life? Jason's expression hardened slightly. She's being helpful, Hazel. Someone needs to be here for the kids when you're working late. His words stung, implying I was neglecting my family for my career. A sensitive point he knew well. But before I could respond, Emma bounded into the kitchen. Mommy, guess what Aunt Amber taught me and Daddy? A secret handshake today. It's our special thing. Special thing, I echoed, looking at Jason. Just a silly game, he said, avoiding my eyes. Later that week, while tucking Emma into bed, she innocently mentioned something that sent ice through my veins. Aunt Amber says she and Daddy have a special friendship like best friends. She says sometimes grown-ups need best friends that aren't their husband or wife. I kept my expression neutral, kissing my daughter goodnight while my mind raced. The next morning, I checked Jason's phone while he showered. Something I'd never done before, an invasion of privacy that made me feel simultaneously ashamed and justified. A text thread with Amber contained hundreds of messages, many late at night. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but the familiarity, the inside jokes, the thinking of you messages, they painted a picture of a relationship far closer than a man should have with his sister-in-law. When confronted, Jason exploded. "You're checking my phone now, Jesus Hazel. This is exactly why I can't talk to you anymore. You're paranoid. Yes, I text with Amber. She's family, and unlike you, she actually listens when I talk. She's my sister Jason. Why are you texting her at midnight? Because she's there for me, because I can tell her things without being judged or lectured. This is insane. You're letting your work stress turn you into someone I don't recognize." The gaslighting was subtle but effective. After each argument, I questioned myself. Was I overreacting? Was my career pressure making me paranoid? Was I pushing Jason away? Our parents certainly thought so. When I hinted at my concerns during a family dinner, their response was immediate and unified. "Amber has always been wonderful with children," Mom observed, watching my sister help Liam cut his meat. "Some women just have that natural maternal instinct." The implication hung in the air. Unlike you with your career focus, Dad was less subtle. "Jason's a good man, Hazel. Don't drive him away with jealousy and suspicion. Amber's just being the supportive sister you're too busy to be." I sat in stunned silence as my sister smiled sympathetically across the table. The final confirmation came 3 months later. While doing laundry, I found a hotel receipt in Jason's jacket pocket. The Grand Plaza downtown just last Tuesday when he claimed to be at a late client meeting. The same night I'd called him repeatedly worried when he didn't come home until after midnight. I confronted him immediately, receipt in hand. "It's not what you think," he stammered, face pale. "Then what is it, Jason? Because it looks like you're having an affair." "It's not physical," he finally admitted. "Amber and I have developed an emotional connection. We talk. That's all. She understands me in ways you haven't lately." "An emotional affair is still an affair," I said, voice surprisingly steady despite the room spinning around me. "I still love you, Hazel. I want our marriage to work. Maybe we should try counseling." I agreed to counseling, desperate to save our family. But even as we sat in the therapist's office discussing communication strategies, Jason's phone would light up with messages from Amber, messages he'd check the moment I looked away. The final piece of evidence came from my best friend Rachel, who called me one Saturday morning, hesitation clear in her voice. "Hazel, I saw something last night. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but I was at Marcello's with David and I saw Jason and Amber in a corner booth. They were holding hands across the table, and when they left, he kissed her. Not on the cheek, Hazel. I'm so sorry." My world didn't collapse all at once. It had been crumbling piece by piece for months. But Rachel's call removed the last support beam. That night, I found Amber's distinctive coral lipstick smudged on the collar of Jason's shirt. When confronted, he didn't even bother denying it anymore. "I never meant for this to happen," he said, as if passion had simply overtaken him rather than months of deliberate deception. "Amber and I tried to fight it, but there's something between us. Something real. Something real." I repeated the words, tasting like ash. "And our 10 years together, our children, was that not real enough?" He had no answer, just platitudes about remaining friends for the kids' sake. As he packed an overnight bag claiming he needed space to think, I realized with sickening clarity that I wasn't just losing my husband, I was losing him to my sister. The same sister who was simultaneously dismantling my career piece by calculated piece. After discovering Jason and Amber's betrayal, maintaining focus at work became nearly impossible. My thoughts scattered like leaves in a windstorm during meetings. I'd find myself staring blankly at my computer screen, replaying signs I should have noticed earlier. Sleep became elusive, leaving me functioning on caffeine and anxiety. Despite my personal chaos, I fought to keep my professional life intact. Reynolds and Associates represented stability when everything else was crumbling. I poured myself into a major presentation for Landmark Industries, a potential client that could replace the Meridian account and redeem my professional reputation. For 2 weeks, I meticulously prepared, triple-checking every detail, backing up files hourly. The night before the presentation, I stayed until midnight, finalizing everything. Before leaving, I verified all files were perfect and securely stored. The next morning, disaster struck again. Critical portions of my presentation were altered. Competitive analysis numbers changed. Proposed timeline extended by months, budget figures inflated by nearly 30%. The changes were subtle enough that I might not have caught them if I hadn't memorized every detail. "This isn't possible," I muttered frantically, trying to restore the correct information as the meeting time approached. "I checked everything last night." Then Amber appeared in my doorway, concern etched across her face. "Everything okay? You look stressed." "Someone changed my presentation files. The landmark numbers are all wrong." "Oh no, good thing I made a backup yesterday when I saw you working so hard. Let me get it for you." She returned moments later with her laptop, showing me a perfect copy of my presentation, complete with all the correct data I'd spent weeks compiling. "You're a lifesaver," I said, relief momentarily overriding suspicion. "What are sisters for?" she replied, squeezing my shoulder. The presentation went smoothly thanks to Amber's backup, but afterward Richard called me into his office. "Amber tells me she had to save the presentation with her backup files," he said, expression concerned. "That's twice now with major technical issues, Hazel. Is everything all right with you?" "I don't understand how it happened," I admitted. "I verified everything last night." Well, thankfully, Amber anticipated the problem. She's showing remarkable foresight lately. That conversation was the first of many where Richard increasingly praised Amber while questioning my reliability. Over the following weeks, a disturbing pattern emerged. Important client calls mysteriously rerouted to Amber's extension. My meeting invitations accidentally sent with incorrect times, critical emails arriving in Amber's inbox instead of mine. Rumors began circulating about my personal problems affecting my work. When I arrived early one morning, I overheard two colleagues in the break room. I heard she had a complete breakdown in front of the landmark people. Wouldn't surprise me. Jason left her for her sister, you know. Messy situation. They fell silent when they noticed me, offering weak smiles before hurrying away. The humiliation burned like acid. My personal tragedy had become office gossip, no doubt fueled by Amber's concerned confidences to colleagues. One Tuesday afternoon, I returned from lunch to find Amber emerging from Richard's office, both wearing serious expressions. Richard's assistant gave me a pitying look that sent warning bells clanging in my mind. Later that day, I discovered Amber had been meeting privately with Richard for weeks. When I asked her directly, she sighed dramatically. "Richard's concerned about you, Hazel. We all are. With everything happening at home, maybe work is too much right now." "My work is fine," I insisted. "I need my career, especially now." Her expression was perfectly calibrated between sympathy and doubt. "Of course. I just want what's best for you." The final betrayal came during the quarterly strategy presentation. A comprehensive digital marketing approach I developed for our biggest client was presented by Amber as her own work. I watched in stunned silence as she walked the team through my research, my analysis, my creative concepts, all slightly reworded but unmistakably mine. When I tried to speak up, Richard gently cut me off. "Let's hear Amber out, Hazel. Her ideas are quite innovative." After the meeting, I confronted her in the hallway. "That was my strategy. I've been working on it for months." "Was it?" She looked genuinely confused. "I've been developing this approach since I started here. Maybe we just think alike, great minds and all that." Before I could respond, she was called away by Richard, leaving me speechless with fury and disbelief. 2 days later, the company announced a restructuring. My position was being eliminated in favor of a more agile approach to client services. Amber, meanwhile, was promoted to a newly created role that essentially encompassed my former responsibilities. "I fought for you," Richard claimed during my termination meeting. "But the partners feel we need fresh perspective in the senior ranks. And Amber provides that perspective." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Richard had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Amber has shown exceptional initiative lately. She's connected well with clients who previously worked exclusively with you." The HR representative handed me a severance package, generous enough to avoid potential legal issues, but a pittance compared to the career I was losing. "Amber wanted you to know she feels terrible about this," the woman added. "She said she'd be happy to help with references." The final indignity came while cleaning out my desk. In my email trash folder, I discovered dozens of deleted client messages, communications I'd never seen that had been intercepted, read, and discarded before I could respond. The email properties showed they'd been accessed when I was in meetings or at lunch, times when my computer would have been unattended. The evidence of systematic sabotage was clear but useless now. My reputation was damaged, my position eliminated, my sister installed in my place. As I carried my personal belongings to my car, I realized with sickening clarity that I was now unemployed in the middle of a divorce and fighting for custody of my children, all orchestrated by the sister I had once protected and supported throughout her life. Financial panic set in that night as I reviewed our household accounts. As the primary breadwinner, my income had covered the mortgage, car payments, and most living expenses. Jason had already drained our joint savings account, legally, since both names were on it. With no job and mounting legal fees, how would I support myself, let alone fight for my children? The answer arrived in an unexpected way just 3 days later with news of my Uncle Richard's death and the mysterious inheritance that would change everything. 1 month after losing my job, Jason filed for divorce. The petition arrived by courier while I was interviewing for a position that paid half my previous salary. The timing seemed deliberately calculated to maximize my distress. Another surgical strike in the campaign to dismantle my life. Jason cited irreconcilable differences as the primary reason, but the detailed petition painted me as paranoid, work-obsessed, and emotionally unavailable to both him and our children. Reading his characterization of our marriage, a complete rewriting of our 10 years together, made me physically ill. That evening, Amber called voice-dripping with rehearsed concern. "I just heard about the divorce papers," she said. "I'm so sorry, Hazel. This must be devastating." "Don't," I interrupted, surprising even myself with the coldness in my voice. "Don't pretend you're not involved." "I understand you're angry," she replied smoothly. "But Jason made his own decisions. I never meant for any of this to happen. You never meant to sleep with my husband, to take my job, to destroy my life." A pause. "I think you need help, Hazel. This paranoia isn't healthy." After hanging up, I sat in my rented apartment, a dreary 1-bedroom in a neighborhood I would never have chosen for my children, and allowed myself 5 minutes of tears. Just 5 minutes. Then I called the only lawyer I could afford with my dwindling savings. "They're going to request temporary custody," Miranda Wilson warned after reviewing the petition. "And based on current circumstances, they might get it." Current circumstances. You're unemployed, living in temporary housing while your husband remains in the family home with your sister providing childcare support. It doesn't look good, Hazel. But that's not fair. I lost my job because of Amber's manipulation. I had to leave my home because— "I believe you," Miranda interrupted gently. "But family court doesn't run on beliefs. It runs on documentation, stability assessments, and the status quo. Right now, all those favor your husband." She was right. The temporary custody hearing was a carefully orchestrated performance. Jason appeared calm and collected in a suit I had purchased for him last Christmas. Amber sat directly behind him, perfectly styled in a conservative dress that screamed reliable caregiver. My parents flanked her, a united front against me. Jason's attorney presented him as the stable parent, maintaining the children's routine in the family home, while characterizing me as emotionally unstable after professional setbacks. When my attorney challenged this portrayal, Jason's lawyer called their star witness Amber. My sister took the stand with practiced reluctance, casting sorrowful glances my way, as she systematically destroyed my character with half-truths and calculated omissions. "Hazel has always been extremely focused on her career," she testified. "The children would call me when they needed something and couldn't reach their mother." "And how often did that occur?" Jason's attorney prompted. "At least weekly. Sometimes Emma would call crying because she couldn't remember when her mother said she'd be home." The lie burned like fire. I had never been unreachable to my children. Never. But without phone records to disprove her claim, it was my word against hers. "Have you observed any concerning behavior from your sister recently?" Amber sighed dramatically. "She's become increasingly paranoid, accusing me and others of conspiracies against her. She blamed me for problems at work instead of accepting responsibility. It's been heartbreaking to watch." When questioned about her relationship with Jason, she crafted her response perfectly. "Jason and I became close as friends while supporting the children through this difficult time. Any deeper relationship developed only after he had moved out and filed for divorce." The technical truth disguised the actual betrayal, making their affair seem like a natural progression rather than the cause of our family's destruction. My parents' testimony proved equally devastating. They described me as always ambitious and career-focused, contrasting with Amber's natural way with children. They expressed concerns about my recent instability and praised Jason's parenting. Not once did they acknowledge the devastating betrayal I had suffered at the hands of my husband and sister. The judge granted temporary custody to Jason, with Amber providing childcare when he worked. I received 2 supervised visits weekly at a family center. Supervised as if I posed some danger to my own children. The supervision requirement was based on a single incident Jason described where I supposedly became erratic during a pickup, frightening Emma. It never happened, but Emma was too young to testify, and Jason had Amber as a witness. The first supervised visit broke something inside me. Emma, normally exuberant, hung back cautiously, studying me as if I were a stranger. Liam burst into tears when I tried to hug him. "What's wrong, sweetie?" I asked, kneeling to his level. "It's just Mommy." Aunt Amber said, "You're sick in your head," he whispered, eyes wide with confusion. "Are you better now?" I maintained my composure, somehow engaging them with stories and games while the supervisor watched. But when Emma refused to hug me goodbye, pulling away with Aunt Amber, says, "You don't really love us, or you wouldn't have left the facade cracked." "Emma, that's not true," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I love you more than anything. I didn't want to leave." "Your time is up, Miss Stevens," the supervisor interrupted. Driving home, I pulled over twice to sob, the pain physical in its intensity. They were turning my children against me, poisoning their minds with lies while I was granted mere hours to counter the narrative. Over subsequent visits, the alienation worsened. Liam cried when visit time ended, not wanting to leave with me but to return to Aunt Amber and Daddy. Emma repeated phrases clearly planted by adults. "Why did you hurt Daddy's feelings?" And Aunt Amber says sometimes mommies love work more than babies. Meanwhile, my financial situation deteriorated rapidly. Temp jobs barely covered rent and utilities. Legal fees mounted with each court filing. Jason fought every attempt to sell assets or access retirement accounts to fund my attorney. When I returned to court requesting financial support, Jason's lawyer presented evidence that I had voluntarily left my high-paying position and was deliberately underemployed to increase support payments. The lowest blow came when my parents informed me they were selling their home, the house where Amber and I had grown up, and offering Jason and Amber a family discount to buy it. "We're getting older," Hazel Dad explained awkwardly over the phone. "The house is too much for us. Jason and Amber can provide a stable home for the children there. You're selling our family home to the sister who stole my husband." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "How can you support them after what they've done?" "That's enough," Mom interjected. "This attitude is exactly why we're concerned about you. Jason and Amber aren't perfect, but they're providing stability for Emma and Liam. What are you providing except bitterness and accusations?" Their betrayal was perhaps the most painful of all. The parents, who should have been my strongest advocates, had instead become accomplices in my sister's campaign to appropriate my life. That night, lying on my lumpy sofa bed, I contemplated giving up. Fighting seemed futile against the unified front of Jason, Amber, and my parents. Maybe the children would be better off if I stepped aside, sparing them the trauma of ongoing conflict. The thought of surrendering made me physically ill, but what choice did I have? My resources were depleted, my support system non-existent. The next morning, the call came from Uncle Richard's lawyer. Little did I know that my mother's brother, the family's quiet observer who had always shown me special kindness, had been watching events unfold with greater clarity than I realized. Uncle Richard's funeral was a small affair at the Presbyterian church he'd attended for 40 years. As my mother's older brother, he'd been a peripheral but consistent presence throughout my childhood. The quiet uncle who remembered birthdays with thoughtful gifts and offered wisdom without judgment. I hadn't seen him in nearly 6 months, not since a brief lunch where I'd carefully avoided discussing my disintegrating marriage. Despite my silence, he'd studied me with knowing eyes, asking pointed questions about Amber and Jason that seemed odd at the time. Now I wondered what he had suspected. At the funeral, I sat alone in the back row, painfully aware of my isolation. Jason and Amber occupied a central pew with my children and parents, the picture of a united family grieving together. Emma spotted me and waved before Amber whispered something that made her turn away. The casual cruelty of the moment nearly broke me. After the service, people gathered at Uncle Richard's home for refreshments. I kept to the periphery, enduring pitying glances and awkward conversations. Amber played the perfect niece, helping serve food while keeping my children close to her side, just beyond my reach. The lawyer will read Richard's will at 2 o'clock in the study, my mother informed everyone, pointedly avoiding my gaze. Family only, please. At the appointed time, we assembled in Uncle Richard's book-lined study. Thomas Wilson, his attorney and friend of 30 years, waited behind the desk, document folder in hand. The tension was palpable as he cleared his throat and began reading. Uncle Richard had divided his modest savings and possessions among family members in predictable ways. His stamp collection to a cousin who shared the hobby, family photos to my mother, his car to a nephew. Nothing surprising until Thomas reached the largest asset. To my niece, Hazel Stevens, I leave the sum of $80,000 with specific conditions outlined in the attached letter to be opened by Hazel alone. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, $80,000. My father's voice cracked with disbelief. To Hazel, that's almost everything he had. Amber's perfectly composed expression slipped momentarily, revealing naked rage before recovering into practiced concern. There must be some mistake. Uncle Richard couldn't have intended. The will is quite clear, Thomas interrupted firmly. And I can assure you, Richard knew exactly what he was doing. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name, written in Uncle Richard's precise handwriting. All eyes fixed on it as though it might burst into flame. I'd like a moment alone to read this, I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. Whatever it says concerns this family, my mother protested. We should all hear it. The letter is addressed solely to Hazel Thomas, stated firmly. Richard's instructions were explicit. Everyone else, please wait outside. Once alone, I broke the seal with trembling fingers and unfolded the pages within. Dearest Hazel, asterisk. If you're reading this, I've passed on. I'm sorry I won't be there to support you through the challenges you're facing. But perhaps this letter and what comes with it can help right some wrongs. Asterisk. Asterisk. I've been watching what's happening in your family with growing concern. While others might be fooled by Amber's performance, I've had 8 decades to learn to recognize genuine character. What she and Jason have done to you is unconscionable. The way your parents have enabled their behavior is deeply disappointing. Asterisk. Asterisk. You've always been the strong one. Hazel, reliable, hardworking, honest. These virtues shouldn't make you vulnerable to those who lack them, yet here we are. Asterisk. Asterisk. The money I've left you comes with conditions not to control you, but to protect you from those who would misappropriate it. Asterisk. Asterisk. First, it must be used primarily for 3 purposes: securing appropriate housing for you and your children, funding your legal battle for custody, and supporting you until you re-establish your career. Asterisk. Asterisk. Second, you must document all expenditures and provide quarterly reports to Thomas, who will ensure compliance. Asterisk. Asterisk. Third, under no circumstances are you to loan or give any portion to your parents, Jason, or especially Amber, regardless of what sob stories they might concoct. Asterisk. Asterisk. This may seem harsh, but I've witnessed Amber's manipulations since she was a child. Her tears and apparent remorse have always been tactical rather than genuine. Don't let her performance art sway you again. Asterisk. Asterisk. There's more you should know. After our lunch, 6 months ago, I hired a private investigator to observe certain situations I found concerning. The evidence he gathered is on a USB drive in Thomas's possession, along with additional documentation I've collected. This wasn't mere meddling. I needed to be certain before taking action. Asterisk. Asterisk. Use this information wisely, Hazel. Not for vengeance, though God knows they deserve it, but for justice and the well-being of your children. Asterisk. Asterisk. You are stronger than you know. When this is over, and it will end, remember that your worth was never defined by your job title or marital status. It lives in your integrity, resilience, and the love you show your children. Asterisk. Asterisk. With faith in your strength, asterisk, asterisk, Uncle Richard, asterisk. Tears blurred the signature as I finished reading. Uncle Richard had seen the truth when everyone else accepted Amber's performance. His validation felt like the first clean breath after months of suffocation. When I emerged from the study composed, but with unmistakable purpose, the family's reactions varied from my father's barely contained fury to my mother's tearful accusations of manipulation. "How did you convince him to change his will?" she demanded. "He always divided everything equally." "I didn't know anything about this," I replied truthfully. "Uncle Richard made his own decisions." Amber approached, reaching for my hands in a practiced gesture of sisterly concern. "Hazel, whatever he wrote in that letter, please remember families should stick together. This money could help all of us." I withdrew my hands before she could touch me. "No, Amber. This money is not for all of us." Her mask slipped again longer this time. "After everything I've done for your children, well, you've been too wrapped up in your own problems to be a proper mother." The naked hostility in her voice drew startled looks from others nearby. She quickly recalibrated a tear, appearing perfectly on cue. "I'm sorry that was uncalled for. I'm just emotional about Uncle Richard." "We all are." Jason stepped forward, arm around Amber's shoulders. "Hazel, be reasonable. That money could benefit the kids." "You mean it could benefit you and Amber the first," corrected quietly. My parents exchanged glances before my father cleared his throat. Richard clearly wasn't thinking clearly near the end. "We're still family, Hazel. This situation calls for sharing, not selfishness." The absurdity of his statement, coming from the man who had taken my sister's side in every conflict, who was selling our childhood home to the couple who had betrayed me, nearly made me laugh. "This conversation is over," I said, simply turning to Thomas. "I'd like to discuss next steps privately." As I walked away with Richard's lawyer, I felt Amber's eyes burning into my back. For the first time since my life began unraveling, I felt a flicker of hope. And from Amber's expression, she recognized the shift in power, too. In Thomas's office the following day, he handed me a USB drive and a thick folder. Richard was methodical, he explained. He suspected something was wrong when he observed Jason and Amber at a family gathering last year. Their behavior struck him as inappropriate. "He saw what I couldn't," I admitted. "Sometimes we're too close to see clearly." The USB contains recordings, photographs, and documents the investigator gathered. The folder holds financial records, emails, and other evidence Richard collected himself. As I reviewed the contents, a clear picture emerged of Amber's systematic campaign to appropriate my life. The investigator had documented her accessing my work computer multiple times when I was absent. Email records showed she'd created filters to redirect client messages. There were photographs of her and Jason together dating back 18 months, long before our marriage showed any visible signs of trouble. Most disturbing were recordings of Amber coaching my children on what to say during visits. "Remember to tell Mommy you're scared when she gets angry," she instructed Emma in one audio file. "You're not lying. She does get angry, right? This will help Daddy keep you safe." Thomas watched me process this evidence, his expression sympathetic. "Richard wanted you to have everything you need to fight back effectively. But he also left a message urging caution and strategy rather than immediate confrontation." Why I asked, though, I was beginning to understand. Because Amber is dangerous in her way. Not physically, but she's remarkably skilled at turning situations to her advantage. Richard believed you needed to build your case methodically before challenging her directly. As I left Thomas's office, the weight on my shoulders felt different. Heavy still, but purposeful rather than crushing. Uncle Richard had given me more than money. He'd given me validation, evidence, and a path forward. That evening, Jason called, his tone conciliatory for the first time in months. "I've been thinking about our situation," he began carefully. "Maybe we've been too hasty about the divorce. For the kids' sake, we could try counseling again." The transparency of his sudden change of heart, coming immediately after the will reading, would have been comical if it weren't so insulting. "No, Jason, we're well past that point. This is about the money, isn't it? You're punishing me because of your inheritance." "This is about truth," I replied calmly. "And soon everyone will know it." After hanging up, I sat in my small apartment meticulously organizing Uncle Richard's evidence and planning my next moves. For the first time in too long, I felt like myself again. Clear-headed, determined, and unafraid. The money would help, certainly. But the knowledge that someone had seen through Amber's manipulations, had believed in me when no one else did. That was the true inheritance. Uncle Richard had given me back my power, and I intended to use it wisely. With Uncle Richard's evidence as a foundation, I began methodically building my case. First, I secured proper housing. Not the mansion Amber and Jason now occupied, but a comfortable 3-bedroom townhouse in a good school district. The space represented more than physical comfort. It was a statement that I was establishing stability for my children's eventual return. Following Uncle Richard's advice conveyed through Thomas, I hired a reputable private investigator named Sarah Delgado to continue surveillance and documentation. Your uncle's investigator laid excellent groundwork, Sarah noted as we reviewed his files in my new home office. But we need more recent evidence, particularly regarding their treatment of your children and any ongoing workplace manipulation. For the next 6 weeks, Sarah documented patterns that confirmed my worst fears. Jason routinely left the children with Amber while he worked late or socialized. During her care, Amber often neglected them for hours, parking them in front of screens while she made lengthy phone calls or entertained friends. Once she left 9-year-old Emma in charge of 4-year-old Liam while she ran quick errands that lasted nearly 3 hours. More disturbing were recorded conversations where she systematically undermined me to my children. "Your mom is probably too busy to come to your recital," she told Emma before one of my scheduled visits. "But don't worry, I'll record it. I'm always here for you, unlike some people." When Emma later asked if I was coming to her recital, the trap was set: either I didn't know about it, proving Amber right about my detachment, or I did know but hadn't mentioned it, seemingly confirming her implication that I didn't care enough to attend. This pattern repeated with birthday plans, school activities, and doctor's appointments. Information deliberately withheld, until I could be portrayed as uninformed or uninterested. Meanwhile, I reconnected with Diane from Reynolds & Associates, who had reached out after hearing about my difficult situation. I never believed the rumors she confided over coffee. The timing of everything was too convenient for Amber. Diane had maintained copies of emails and documents proving my work had been sabotaged and my ideas appropriated. More importantly, she had witnessed Amber accessing my computer multiple times when I was absent. She always had an explanation: printing something for you, checking a client file you'd asked about. But it never felt right. Diane's documentation provided crucial evidence of the professional sabotage that had cost me my career. With her permission, I added her statement and evidence to my growing file. My next step was confronting my parents, not to reconcile, but to present enough evidence that they might question their unwavering support of Amber. I invited them to my new townhouse, an invitation they accepted with obvious reluctance. Their reaction to the property was telling. Mother glanced around with poorly disguised surprise, while Father immediately questioned how I could afford it. Uncle Richard's inheritance, I explained simply. "Please sit down. There's something you need to see." I presented a carefully curated selection of evidence. Photos of Amber and Jason together dating back months before our separation, documentation of work sabotage recordings of Amber coaching my children to fear me. Their reactions followed a predictable pattern: initial denial, attempts to justify anger at being confronted, and finally weak rationalizations. Even if some of this is true, my father argued Jason and Amber fell in love. These things happen. While he was still my husband, I countered. While she was systematically destroying my career and turning my children against me, these things don't just happen, Dad. They were orchestrated. My mother wiped away tears. "Why are you showing us this? To hurt us, to force us to choose sides." "You've already chosen sides," I replied, keeping my voice level despite the pain her words caused. "I'm showing you this because I thought you deserved to know the truth before things changed dramatically." They left unconvinced, their allegiance to Amber's narrative too deeply entrenched to be overturned by a single conversation. I hadn't expected immediate conversion, but their continued willful blindness represented yet another loss to process. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. My childhood friend Sarah reached out after hearing rumors about my situation. "I've been meaning to call for ages," she admitted. "But honestly, I wasn't sure what was true anymore." Over lunch, Sarah revealed a pattern I hadn't fully appreciated: Amber's lifelong habit of appropriating my achievements, possessions, and relationships. "Remember Kevin Roberts from high school? Your first serious boyfriend Amber told him you were cheating and showed him doctored messages as proof. She was dating him 2 weeks after you broke up." Similar stories emerged about college, scholarships, job opportunities, even clothing and jewelry that mysteriously migrated from my closet to hers. What I had dismissed as normal sibling rivalry appeared in hindsight as a systematic pattern of covetousness and sabotage. "I always thought you knew," Sarah said, eyes wide with realization. "You were so forgiving, so understanding about everything she did. I assumed you were just being the bigger person." "I was being the bigger fool," I replied with a bitter laugh. Sarah's perspective added valuable context to my case, evidence that Amber's behavior wasn't a sudden anomaly, but a lifelong pattern now escalated to its logical extreme. The private investigator's financial probe yielded another crucial piece of the puzzle: massive debt. Amber had accumulated over $120 0 credit card debt, personal loans, and unpaid taxes. A financial disaster hidden behind designer clothes and frequent vacations. "This explains the urgency," Sarah Delgado noted. "She needed your life, your husband's income, your home, your job, because she was financially drowning." With this information, Amber's methodical dismantling of my life made perfect sense. It wasn't just jealousy or opportunistic desire. It was financial desperation combined with lifelong envy. As evidence mounted, I maintained my composure during supervised visits with Emma and Liam, noting every comment that indicated coaching or alienation but never contradicting them directly. Instead, I focused on rebuilding connection through consistent presence and unconditional love. A breakthrough came when Emma secretly called me one evening, voice small and frightened. "Mommy, can you talk?" "Of course, sweetheart. I can always talk to you." "What's wrong?" Aunt Amber made Liam cry. She said he was being bad, but he just wanted his stuffed dragon that's at your house. She told him to stop being a baby and that you probably threw his toys away. "I would never throw away Mr. Dragon," I assured her, heart racing at this unexpected communication. "He's safe here, waiting for Liam's next visit." "I know," Emma whispered. "Aunt Amber says mean things about you when Daddy's not home. She thinks I don't understand, but I do." "What kinds of things, sweetheart?" "That you're crazy. That you don't love us enough." "But that's not true. I remember before when we were happy." Fighting tears, I kept my voice steady. "We'll be happy again, Emma. I promise. I have to go. She's coming upstairs." The call ended abruptly, but its impact was profound. My daughter was beginning to see through the manipulation. More importantly, she had reached out to me despite the barriers erected between us. 2 days before my scheduled confrontation, I received an unexpected call from Jason. "We need to talk," he began without preamble. "About the kids, about the divorce, about everything." "We do," I agreed. "But not just us. Amber needs to be part of this conversation." "I'm not sure that's a good idea right now. Things are complicated." "Things have always been complicated, Jason. The difference is that now I understand why." His hesitation spoke volumes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about Amber's debt. I know when your affair really started. I know about the work sabotage and the parental alienation. I know everything, Jason." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. "How much do you want?" he finally asked, voice resigned. "This isn't about money. This is about truth and consequences. Be at my parents' house tomorrow at 7. Bring Amber. We're going to have the conversation that's long overdue." As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. For months I had been reacting to their machinations, scrambling to understand what was happening and why. Now, with evidence secured and strategy in place, I was finally taking control of the narrative. That night, I reviewed every document, recording, and photograph one final time, organizing them for maximum impact. I rehearsed what I would say, anticipating their reactions and preparing my responses. Uncle Richard's final note remained on my desk throughout this preparation. "Remember, Hazel, this isn't about vengeance. It's about justice, truth, and your children's well-being. Stay focused on what matters." With those words guiding me, I prepared to reclaim what was stolen. Not just my marriage or job, but something far more precious: my dignity, my narrative, and my children's future. The evening of the confrontation, I arrived at my parents' house 30 minutes early, accompanied by Thomas Wilson. My mother's surprise at seeing Uncle Richard's lawyer quickly turned to apprehension. "What's this about Hazel?" she asked, eyeing Thomas warily. "Just ensuring everything proceeds fairly," I replied, setting my evidence portfolio on the dining room table. "Is Dad here?" "In his study. He's not happy about this impromptu family meeting." "He'll be even less happy soon," I thought, but didn't say. As 7 o'clock approached, nervous tension filled the house. My father emerged from his study, nodding curtly in my direction while ignoring Thomas completely. My mother busied herself arranging unnecessary refreshments, her hands trembling slightly. The doorbell rang at precisely 7. Jason entered first, expression guarded, followed by Amber, who immediately launched into her performance. "Hazel, what a surprise!" she exclaimed with practiced warmth. "You should have told me you were coming. I would have brought the kids." Her gaze shifted to Thomas. "And who is this?" "Thomas Wilson, Richard's attorney," he replied, before I could. "I'm here in an advisory capacity." Amber's smile faltered momentarily. "Is this about the inheritance?" "Because I think family matters should stay within the family." "Please everyone, sit down," I said, gesturing to the dining room table. "This won't take long." Once everyone was seated with Thomas slightly behind me providing silent support, I opened the portfolio and placed a stack of documents in the center of the table. For months, I've been trying to understand how my life collapsed so completely. I began, voice steady despite my racing heart. My marriage, my career, my relationship with my children, all destroyed with stunning efficiency. Amber immediately adopted her concerned expression. "Hazel, we've all been worried about how you're processing everything. This paranoia." "Let me finish," I interrupted calmly. "What I couldn't figure out was why. Why would my sister systematically dismantle everything I valued? Why would my husband of 10 years suddenly betray our family? Why would my parents accept this new reality without question?" I removed the first document, a detailed credit report showing Amber's catastrophic financial situation. $123,000 in debt, I stated, sliding it toward my parents. Credit cards maxed out, personal loans in default, tax liens pending. Amber was financially drowning long before she started pursuing my husband. My mother gasped, reaching for the report, while my father's face darkened with disbelief. Amber's expression shifted from practiced concern to genuine alarm. "Where did you get that?" "That's private information. Uncle Richard hired a financial investigator," I explained. "He was concerned about certain patterns he observed." Before Amber could respond, I continued methodically through the evidence. Email records showing her systematic sabotage at Reynolds and Associates. Bank statements proving how she'd gradually drained joint accounts she'd helped Jason establish without my knowledge. Photographs documenting her affair with Jason dating back 18 months before our separation. With each revelation, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. My parents' expressions shifted from skepticism to confusion to dawning horror. Jason stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Only Amber maintained her composure, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the table. Then came the most damning evidence: recordings of Amber coaching my children to fear me, instructing them on what to say during supervised visits, promising them treats for reporting back my conversations. Videos of her neglecting them for hours while supposedly providing devoted childcare. Documentation of her intercepting school communications so I would appear uninvolved in my children's education. My mother began to cry softly while my father's face hardened into an unreadable mask. Jason looked physically ill. "Is this true?" my father finally asked, turning to Amber. "Did you deliberately interfere with Hazel's career?" Amber's eyes narrowed fractionally before she composed her features into wounded innocence. "Daddy, you can't possibly believe I would do such things. These recordings could be manipulated, these documents fabricated. Hazel is clearly still struggling with—" "Stop," Jason interrupted, surprising everyone. "Just stop, Amber. It's over." She turned to him, genuinely shocked. "Jason?" "I knew about some of this," he admitted, unable to look at me. "The affair, obviously, the separate accounts. But I didn't know about the rest, the extent of the manipulation, what you've been telling the kids." "You're believing her over me," Amber's voice rose shrilly. "After everything we've built together." "What we built was on stolen foundation," he replied quietly. I allowed the implications to settle before delivering the final revelation. A video recording Uncle Richard had made 6 months before his death. The laptop screen flickered to life with his familiar face, more serious than I'd ever seen him. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I'm gone, and Hazel has gathered sufficient evidence to confront those who have wronged her. I make this statement of sound mind and body, having personally witnessed disturbing patterns of behavior in this family." He proceeded to detail specific incidents he'd observed Amber's inappropriate behavior with Jason at family gatherings, subtle undermining comments about my parenting, private conversations overheard where she gleefully described taking over aspects of my life. "I've known Amber since she was born," Uncle Richard continued solemnly. "I've watched her manipulate situations and people her entire life, always with the same pattern. Identify what Hazel has coveted, take it, and then portray herself as the victim if challenged. This behavior was troubling but relatively harmless when it involved childhood toys or teenage boyfriends. Now it threatens to destroy lives." As the recording ended, Amber's facade finally crumbled completely. Rage replaced the practiced mask of concern. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" she hissed, abandoning all pretense. "Little Miss Responsible, always doing everything right. You had everything handed to you. Looks, brains, the perfect husband, perfect career, perfect children. Some of us had to fight for what we wanted." "Handed to me," I repeated incredulously. "I worked for everything I achieved. Nothing was handed to me. You were always the favorite, always the special one. Even with Mom and Dad pretending to prefer me, everyone knew you were the one they really admired. Their responsible daughter, their pride and joy." My parents' stunned expressions confirmed they had never seen this side of their golden child. "So you decided to take everything from me, destroy my marriage, steal my career, turn my children against me. I deserved what you had," she shouted, losing all control. "I lived in your shadow my entire life. Jason noticed me, appreciated me, in ways he never did you. The clients at work responded better to my presentations. Even your children prefer me. I'm better at being you than you ever were." Her accidental confession hung in the air, stunning everyone into silence. My mother covered her mouth in horror while my father seemed to physically age before our eyes, shoulders slumping with the weight of terrible understanding. Into this stunned silence, I placed the final document on the table. A comprehensive settlement proposal prepared by my attorney. "These are my terms," I stated calmly. "Full custody of Emma and Liam, with supervised visitation for Jason, until a therapist determines more extensive contact is appropriate. Amber will have no contact with my children without my explicit permission. The house will be sold with proceeds divided according to the original investment. Jason will provide child support according to the standard calculation." I turned to my parents. "As for you both, I'll allow limited supervised grandparent visitation once you've completed family therapy sessions and demonstrated understanding of your role in enabling this situation." My father opened his mouth as if to object, then closed it again, the fight gone from him. "If you contest these terms," Thomas added, speaking for the first time, "we're prepared to present all this evidence in court. Everything we've shown tonight, and more, would become public record." Jason nodded slowly. "I won't contest custody. The kids should be with their mother." He glanced at Amber, who sat rigid with fury. "I've been a fool, and they've paid the price." My mother reached across the table trying to take my hand, but I gently withdrew it. "Hazel, please," she pleaded. "We didn't know. We never thought Amber would. You didn't want to know I corrected her. There were signs all along, but acknowledging them would have disrupted the family narrative you preferred. Amber the golden child, me the dependable one who needed no support or protection." My father finally spoke, voice rough with emotion. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, standing and gathering my evidence, "I take back what's mine. My children, my dignity, my truth. The rest is up to all of you." As Thomas and I prepared to leave, Amber made one last desperate attempt. "You can't do this to me after everything I've done for your children." "You've done enough," I interrupted, feeling nothing but exhaustion at her continued performance. "More than enough." Walking out of my parents' house that night, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only relief that the truth was finally acknowledged and the path to healing now lay open before us. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner while Emma and Liam did homework at the table. Our new routine still felt miraculous some days. Simple domestic moments I had once taken for granted, now treasured as the precious gifts they were. The court ruling had come through with surprising speed once Jason withdrew his custody challenge. The evidence against Amber proved so compelling that the judge granted me full custody with a detailed reunification plan for Jason to gradually increase his visitation rights as the children adjusted and healed. Our family home had sold quickly the proceeds, allowing me to purchase our current house. Smaller than the previous one, but filled with warmth and security rather than secrets and betrayal. The neighborhood offered excellent schools, friendly neighbors, and most importantly, a fresh start away from painful memories. Uncle Richard's inheritance had served its purpose perfectly, providing financial stability while I rebuilt my career. Through Thomas's connections, I secured a position with a marketing firm owned by my uncle's former business partner, Martin Green. The role offered more responsibility and better compensation than my previous job, with the added benefit of a supportive work environment free from sabotage and manipulation. "Hazel, your uncle spoke highly of your abilities," Martin had said during our interview. "After reviewing your portfolio, I can see his confidence was well placed." Jason had made several attempts at reconciliation in the months following our divorce, his messages growing increasingly personal as he claimed to recognize the depth of his mistake. "I was blind," he wrote in one email. "Amber knew exactly how to exploit my insecurities and ego. I threw away something real for an illusion." While I acknowledged his apologies, reconciliation remained off the table. Too much trust had been broken, too many wounds inflicted. We maintained cordial communication focused entirely on the children's well-being, the only relationship possible between us now. My parents' journey toward making amends progressed with painful slowness. The revelation of Amber's true nature and their role in enabling her behavior had shattered their self-image as good discerning parents. Weekly therapy sessions gradually helped them recognize patterns established since our childhood, the different standards applied to each daughter, the blind eye turned to Amber's manipulations, the expectation that I would always understand and forgive. "We failed you," my father admitted during a supervised visit with the children 3 months after the confrontation. "We believed what was convenient rather than what was true." My mother's recognition came more gradually, her maternal instinct to protect Amber warring with mounting evidence of her younger daughter's calculated cruelty. Even now, she sometimes slipped into old habits, making excuses or minimizing before catching herself. "Old patterns die hard," her therapist explained during one of our joint sessions. "Your mother defined herself as the perfect parent for decades. Acknowledging serious mistakes threatens that identity." I maintained firm boundaries, while allowing them limited, supervised time with Emma and Liam. The children needed their grandparents, but only versions willing to see them. And me, clearly. Amber's absence created both relief and complicated emotions. Following her exposure, she had fled to Arizona, unable to face the consequences of her actions or the community's changed perception. According to mutual acquaintances, she had crafted a new narrative portraying herself as the victim of family betrayal, already cultivating fresh relationships with her practiced charm and calculated vulnerability. 3 months ago, she had called unexpectedly, her voice lacking its usual manipulative warmth. "I'm seeing someone," she began without preamble, "a therapist, I mean. She says I need to make amends as part of recovery." "Recovery from what?" "Apparently, I have something called narcissistic personality disorder, with borderline features." She sounded almost proud of the diagnosis, as if claiming medical explanation absolved her of responsibility. "What does making amends look like to you, Amber?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I don't know. That's why I'm calling. I thought maybe we could talk sometimes. Start rebuilding our relationship." The old Hazel might have agreed immediately, eager to forgive and restore family harmony. The new Hazel recognized the request for what it was. Another attempt at manipulation, this time using therapy language as camouflage. "I'm not ready for that," I replied honestly. "Maybe someday, but not now. Any relationship between us would require genuine accountability and changed behavior sustained over years, not months." "So you'll never forgive me? That's not very Christian," she countered, reverting to familiar tactics. "Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation or vulnerability to further harm. I wish you well with your therapy, Amber. I hope it helps you build a life that doesn't depend on taking from others." The children's healing process proved both challenging and rewarding. Weekly sessions with a specialized therapist helped them process their confusion and grief over the family's dissolution. Emma, at 10, struggled with divided loyalties and lingering doubts planted by Amber's manipulation. Liam, at 6, exhibited regression in some developmental areas, but showed remarkable resilience overall. "Children are naturally inclined toward truth and authentic connection," their therapist explained. When consistently provided with both, they typically find their way back to emotional health. Slowly, our relationships healed. Emma no longer questioned my love or commitment, though she sometimes tested boundaries as if verifying my consistency. Liam's nightmares subsided, his stuffed dragon companion relegating to the closet as his confidence grew. The remainder of Uncle Richard's inheritance went toward establishing education funds for both children, ensuring college options regardless of future financial circumstances. This decision honored my uncle's belief in education as the foundation for independence, a value he had quietly supported throughout my own academic journey. Beyond family, I gradually rebuilt connections with friends who had drifted away during my isolation. Rachel, who had warned me about Jason and Amber's affair, became a regular presence in our lives, her unwavering loyalty during my darkest period earning her status as honorary aunt to my children. Diane from Reynolds and Associates joined us frequently for dinner, her decision to speak truth despite professional risk, exemplifying the integrity I wanted my children to witness and develop. Most surprisingly, I discovered new relationships untainted by past dynamics. Other parents from the children's school colleagues at my new firm neighbors, who knew me only as I am now, not as a character in Amber's fabricated narrative. Today's gathering brought these true allies together. Rachel, Diane Thomas, and his wife Martin and his family. A celebration not of what I had lost and reclaimed, but of what we were building together. As laughter filled my home, I realized how profoundly my understanding of family had transformed. No longer defined by blood or obligation, but by authenticity, respect, and mutual support. Later, as I tucked the children into bed, Emma asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, are you still sad about everything that happened?" I considered carefully before answering. "Sometimes I feel sad about how things changed, but I'm not sad about where we are now. Does that make sense?" She nodded solemnly. "It's like when you have to take medicine that tastes really bad, but it makes you better." "That's exactly right," I agreed, amazed by her insight. Sometimes painful experiences help us grow stronger or wiser. "I'm glad we're here with you," she whispered, eyes already closing with sleep. "Me too, sweetheart." More than anything. Downstairs, I found Uncle Richard's final letter, now framed in my office as a reminder of the moment everything changed. The closing lines resonated differently now with the perspective of time and healing. Asterisk. Remember that your worth was never defined by your job title or marital status. It lives in your integrity, resilience, and the love you show your children. Asterisk. He had been right. Losing everything, husband, home, career, family support, had ultimately led me to build something better, a life anchored in truth rather than appearance, in authentic connection, rather than obligation, in resilience, rather than dependency. The betrayal would always remain part of my story, a painful chapter that changed its trajectory, but it no longer defined me or limited my future. From the ashes of that devastating loss, something new had emerged. Not perfect, not without scars, but genuine, strong, and deeply mine. That, I realized, was the true inheritance Uncle Richard had left me. Not just the money that provided temporary stability, but the recognition of my own strength when everything else was stripped away. It was a legacy I intended to honor every day in every choice as I continued rebuilding a life of integrity for myself and my children. Have you ever had to rebuild after a significant betrayal? I'd love to hear how you found your strength in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about resilience and new beginnings. Share with someone who might need encouragement during their own rebuilding process. Thank you for listening to my journey. May you find the courage to reclaim your own story, whatever challenges you face.